welcome Professor Vitaliy Khutoryanskiy. He's a professor of Formulation Science and Royal Society of Industry Fellow, Reading School of Pharmacy, University of Reading. So Professor Khutoryanskiy moved to UK in 2002 and has been made major contribution to the field of biomaterials and drug delivery. His record included more than 240 Web of Science Indexes publications, over almost 20,000 citation and H index of 52. And he's a fellow of Royal Society of Chemistry and Academy of Pharmaceutical Science, and has been listed among 2% of scientists worldwide, according to Stanford Elsevier 2020-2024, ranked position 20 of global drug delivery scholars. So Professor Khutoryanskiy served as a Royal Society Industry Fellow. Also, he's a director and co-founder of PEVITAC. So PEVITAC is a Physicochemical ex vivo integrated test analysis center based in the University of Reading, provide contact research testing and consultancies, muco and bioadhesion, penetration, toxicology, pharmacochemical characterization, and biological activity using ex vivo mammalian tissue. With that, he's also supervised more than 40 PhD students and maintained collaboration with academia industry experts around the UK and Europe. So with that, I think I'm really excited to have a leader in the field of biomaterials and drug delivery. So with that, Professor Khutoryanskiy, you can share your screen. Thank you very much for joining today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Kalamjan, for organizing this event and for inviting me. It's a great pleasure and great honor. I'm really happy that this Kazakh International Science Technology Association has established. I found about it almost by an accident. I saw it on LinkedIn, I think, and I thought it's a fantastic idea, and I'm glad that I became a part of it. Do you see my slides? Yeah, fantastic. So what I'm gonna be telling you today is, let me just rearrange everything so the slides are visible well. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm gonna be telling you a story of my journey, really, and well, since I'm already relatively old, and I guess the majority of people, or possibly all other people who are present here, much younger than me. So I hope there will be something to learn based on my experience. And well, I will tell you some stories how it was many years ago, really. So to start with, do you see my cursor moving at the moment? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so then I will move on with my slides. So just a few words, how I became a scientist. When I was a really young child, um, then maybe around 7 year old, and I really liked collecting different insects, worms, and basically doing experiments on them. Sounds really bad and cruel, but at the time, maybe you don't remember well, you wouldn't know this time, but now we have plastic syringes, the single-use syringes and needles, right? At my time, when I was a child, these were made of glass and metal. And then at some point, my mom gave me like a faulty syringe to a child. And what I did was I started playing with some injections to some of the animals I could catch. Sounds cruel a bit, but ironically enough, that's what I do now as a scientist. So I started with experiments with grasshoppers. There were lots of grasshoppers. I've killed, I'm afraid, at the time. When I became a little bit older, then when I was in year 7, roughly year 7, when chemistry is started as a discipline at school, then basically when the day I got my textbook on chemistry, I read the whole book during the evening. I was really fascinated with this discipline, and I was really lucky that my auntie, she was a chemistry teacher She was a chemistry teacher in one of the schools in Almaty, and she gave me this book. And the book about great chemists is fantastic book. It contained biographies of many famous chemists, and I've been reading that book like many times. I was fascinated by these biographies, and I decided that I really want to become a famous chemist. This book is currently with me, or like I brought it from Almaty to England, and from time to time I like to come back to this book and read it. Well, since I've read this book, since I became fascinated with chemistry, then I started setting up some experiments at home. Well, first experiments were really not massively dangerous, but produced lots of unwanted and possibly toxic smell odors in our flat. So my grandfather sort of complained to my auntie that, oh, we have another chemist in the family, and my auntie then she told me that, okay, I will bring you some flasks and test tubes and some chemicals. So that's how it started. I had like a well, I was very well supported by my family in a way that whatever I wanted to do, as long as it is useful for my development, then they were supportive. They were joking about it, but they were supportive. So then I became absolutely fascinated with chemistry, and in year 10 and 11, I entered the special chemistry special school. Is uh, the first gymnasium, that's how it was called at the time, in Almaty, and I think it was the first one in Kazakhstan. And so I had fantastic chemistry teacher in there who was also very supportive. Eventually, and I was studying in a chemistry and biology division in there, but eventually still have chosen the chemistry as the my main area of specialization. So I entered the chemistry department of Al-Farabi Kazakh National University. It was even, I think it was the time when it was called not Al-Farabi, but it was um, Kazakh National University named after Kirov, the Soviet, one of the Soviet leaders. So in 1992, I entered, and I was the first cohort of students who were transitioned into the system of bachelor, masters, and then like the dual system, because the year before me, people were studying for 5 years, and they were doing completely different degrees. So, and well, that's a picture of me. I think it was year 2 when we were doing analytical chemistry experiments. I had a fantastic friend who was a keen photographer, and he took this picture. So then in 1996, I graduated with first class degree, so-called red diploma. I don't know if they still do red diplomas now in Kazakhstan, I'm not sure. But then I continued my education in to do masters in the same institution. And eventually in 98, I got into the like a PhD program. At the time, it wasn't called PhD, it was called aspirantura. And in 2000, I've got my PhD certificate, which was candidate of chemical sciences. But then I think there were a couple of years when they were issuing certificates where it was written candidate of chemical sciences and then brackets PhD. So I could claim that I got like a proper PhD. Right. So speaking about my English, coming back, when I was in my master's and even in the beginning of my PhD, I didn't speak English at all. Well, I did use English for science, and started when I was doing my master's. I had a fantastic supervisor, Professor Sarkit Kudabergenov, who did speak English. And basically, he did correct lots of my texts, papers. I tried to write in English, and sometimes, of course, he was professor, so he was too busy. So sometimes there were very little opportunities at that time. There were very little opportunities even to practice your English because there were not many foreigners visiting Kazakhstan at the time. And I was really lucky that one of the foreigners decided to visit our group at the time, the guy named Ulhas Harul from India. I guess well, I found his picture on internet, but he looked a lot younger at the time he was visiting. He was like a young scientist who just received his doctorate very recently at the time, and obviously he wasn't important enough for my professor. Uh, so my professor asked me, "Oh, Vitaly, can you take him to the city, give him sightseeing and everything?" So that was my first practice of English with like a speaker of English, like a foreigner, my first foreign scientist, and that's where I kind of realized that, well, if I don't speak English, then there's no way I could progress. So eventually, well, I moved to start my PhD program, and at the time, I already was a bit more like a lot more. I've made a lot more progress in my English, so I was one of the very few people in our Department of Polymer Chemistry who did speak English. And at the time in 1999, we've organized a conference, and the conference was called Turkic Languages, Turkic Speaking Countries Conference on Polymers. So there were like around 40 people coming from Turkey. And because I was one of the very few people who did speak like English at the time, then of course I was involved in organizing committee. So at that time I did my first talk in English. And also, well, the hardest bit is interpreting. So this picture, for example, is me interpreting this guy. This guy is a big, like, professor, academician from Tajikistan, I think. And when you are in a banquet after the conference, then you have to translate all the toasts, and that was really horrible. And I still hate the experience of translating people because translation, it's a special skill. And my slightly older than me colleague, Irina, she's now in Korea, in South Korea. So she was helping me at this situation, and I was listening and I was translating. Horrible experience. Well, I guess some people have better skills at translating, but yeah, it was very difficult. So I look really stressed. Um, my really, really big lessons I got when we did have another visitor, and oops, sorry, we did have a visitor at the time called Professor Janusz Rosiak, and I kind of consider him as one of important people who played like a major role in my progress as a scientist. By the way, that's this lady is my PhD supervisor, Professor Zauresh Nurkeva, who was head of the polymer chemistry department at the time. And again, at the time, I was one of the very few people who did speak English at that department. So I was made in charge for the visit of this professor. So I was following him everywhere, like picking him up from the hotel, bringing him over to the chemistry building, and translating everything, all the conversations. And then at the time, uh, we we didn't know about like impact factors, for example. We thought about, well, you could publish your papers in Vestnik Kazgu, and you'll be fine. But then professor told me that that was my lesson number one, the biggest lesson in my life. So he told me exactly the words. You may be a talented researcher, but if you will continue publishing in Kazakh journals in Russian language, nobody will know that you are talented. And that basically changed my life because when professor left and he was visiting us for around a week, and I had fantastic conversations with him. When professor left, I started writing my first paper in English, and but I will show you this paper a bit later in a later slide. So I also, when I was doing my PhD program, I had like a group and many talented younger students around me. So that's technically that's my first research group. Well, some of these people they got PhD with me. For example, Asem, who is behind me, she did a PhD. She's my first PhD student. Technically, officially I was co-supervisor. Ayjan now is a big boss, something to do with oil industry in Kazakhstan, and she's quite international. There's something I don't know because she sort of moved away from the area she was originally involved, but she's something to do with petroleum chemistry. She's like a big person, I think. And Lazat, she was like a intern from SEME. She's now working as a lecturer or maybe associate professor in SEME. And this guy was Alexei. He disappeared. He was very, very talented student, but he disappeared. And this was not my student. I remember his name Vasily. Anyways, this is my first ever paper I published, like a proper paper. It was published in Macromolecular Chemistry and Physics. It's a relatively good journal. Well, at the time, nobody cared about impact factors. Well, in Kazakhstan, nobody knew what impact factors are. In the West, already in some countries, they started to be recognized. So, but still, well, impact factor of this journal is around 2 now. But this journal was established by the Nobel laureate in polymers, Professor Staudinger, and for me, it was like a big achievement to publish this paper at the time. But it was just 3 pages paper. When I look at this paper now, I think, oh, I'm ashamed. Oh, I should have done much better. It's so short. It lacks descriptions. Look, it's just all the experimental part was fitting in like a few paragraphs only. It, if you look at modern papers, they look completely different. They are much more detailed. They are much of better quality. But at the time, it was a decent paper, and this became part of my PhD thesis. And so this paper did receive a decent number of citations, maybe around 50 citations or something like that. And from time to time, it still picks up some citations. Then I was really lucky that after a visit of Professor Roshak's to Almaty, uh, he was visiting us because we had a project funded by International Atomic Energy Agency, and we did use radiation technologies for producing polymers. So as part of this large grant, I think it was like around 200,000 US dollars grant. So we did receive some modern equipment, and young scientists were supported for their internships in overseas laboratories. So I think I was one of the first people from chemistry faculty to go abroad for a few months. So I've spent 4 months in Poland in this Institute of Applied Radiation Chemistry. So doing experiments and more importantly, still having lots of conversations with the Professor Rosiak. And again, in one of the conversations, he told me another lesson, which I didn't agree with him at the time. Of course, I started even arguing, but he told me that, well, now you're doing your PhD, but this topic of the PhD, it was selected by your supervisor, so it belongs to your supervisor, and you need to find your own topic for your future research. At the time, I started arguing with him, saying that, no, I know this topic much better than my supervisor. I know all the literature, blah, blah, blah. But then he told me, no, it still belongs to your supervisor. At the time, of course, I disagreed with him. Now, as a professor myself, I kind of understand what he meant, and I fully agree with him. So eventually, I established my own topic. So I returned from Poland, and I returned from Poland in March 2000, and I immediately started writing my PhD thesis, and that's this is the picture from my defense. Again, since you're much younger than me, you possibly haven't seen how this has happened in my time. So there were no PowerPoint. there were computers at the time. Internet was relatively limited, and like my first exposure to internet was only available at the Institute of Scientific Information in Almaty, and you have to queue up. You have to wait in a queue to get like half an hour to use internet at the computer. So a defense at that in those years involved preparation of these posters. And my wife was helping me to draw all these graphs. So you have like 20 posters like that and you present. But the difference compared to my PhD now, like the scientific council was much bigger. It did include around 15 people who were specializing in your area. So there were lots of questions. I even managed to argue with one of the professors in there, but then professor was reasonable, so he didn't like fail me or anything like that. But there was a bit of an argument during my defense, a friendly argument. But yeah, I got a PhD 29th of June in 2000. So then I continued to work in Kaznu at the time as a lecturer in polymer science. And then there was another interesting visit, like another group of foreigners came from Pakistan. Um, Now this professor is still a good friend of Kaznu. His name is Professor Muhammad Iqbal Chowdhury. He's like honorary professor of Kaznu, and he was relatively young but established, and again, as with previous foreigners, I was asked to show them Almaty. And during this like sightseeings, they've learned that I'm a polymer scientist. I just got a PhD and speak English, and he invited me to come to Pakistan, to Karachi, with a lecture tour. That was my first lecture tour when I came there in oh, sorry, the year is definitely wrong. It's not 2011. It's 2001. And in 2001, I remember it was August, so it was super hot. So when I left, when the plane arrived to Karachi, I left the plane and I felt, oh no, it was like plus 50 degrees. I never experienced this sort of temperature, even, well, was born, grew up in Almaty, but we never had like 50 degrees. So I've spent 2 weeks in there, even though they wanted me to stay longer, but I couldn't survive for longer. But it was very interesting experience, and I was really young, and well, everybody was calling me Dr. Vitaliy, which was really flattering. Also, during those years, we started receiving some international people in Almaty, in Kaznu. So, for example, one of my PhD students was the guy from Egypt, Al Sayed. He was one of my 4 PhD students at the time. And another person, Injing Bo, she did a PhD in slightly different branch of chemistry, but then she came to our Department of Polymer Science and told us that she wants to do like a bit of a research in polymers. And again, with my supervisor, then my supervisor asked me, "Can you supervise Can you supervise her?" So I did supervise. She was a really interesting person. She did speak Russian, but didn't speak English. So it was an interesting experience. But it was like good ways of talking and discussing science with different people from different countries. And this is really important for everyone's development. Or like advice to young scientists, talk to people, try to engage with different collaborations. Then I was lucky that subsequently in 2002 I won a grant. Grant was designed. It was like a stipend for young scientists of former Soviet Union, and as a part of this stipend, I got a chance to visit Italy, University of Pisa. So I've spent 2 lovely months, April and May, in Pisa, and this is the Professor Maria Grazia Cascone, who did supervise my internship in there. So they had like a lovely Italian group, and I enjoyed Italy very much. In there, I even tried to learn Italian language, was taking Italian lessons 2 months in Almaty, and obviously practicing it in Italy. Still don't speak, unfortunately. Maybe I'm not talented enough. But as you could see, what I lost in Italy, the night I arrived, I decided to lose my mustache. It was easy this way when people know you wear mustache, you have mustache, but then when you come abroad, you could change yourself. And when I came back to Almaty, people were laughing at me and pointing fingers, and I was already a lecturer, so lots of students were pointing fingers at me and I guess making some jokes. Anyways, after Italy, in Italy, I've realized, oh, I really want to develop myself as a scientist in a Western country because at the time we didn't have good equipment in Kazakhstan. We didn't have like access to literature. Internet was really slow and almost non-existent. Uh, so, and Western countries, I've realized that Western countries offer a lot of opportunities. So when I returned from Italy, I started looking for jobs. I did send possibly like 150 different emails, did submit lots and lots of applications, and had many, many responses saying that, sorry, we don't have any postdoctoral positions. But then eventually I got a positive response from Austria, from Institute of Textile Chemistry. And funny enough that this response was they were offering me a position without an interview. They even sent me a contract, which was in German language. Because it's Austria, I had to pay for translation, and there was no embassy of Austria in Kazakhstan, so I was supposed to go to Moscow. So lots of difficulties basically. And I nearly accepted the offer, but then I had another email from the UK, from Strathclyde University in Glasgow, and everything was in English, and I did speak English. So I decided, okay, I'd better choose the UK. And I've chosen this University of Strathclyde in the UK, and that's where I moved with my wife. At the time, my wife was already pregnant, so our son, was born in Glasgow. So 2 years in Glasgow as a postdoc. This is my boss, so Professor Ijoma Chigbu. She is a brilliant scientist, absolutely brilliant scientist, and she had a large group. And the man behind her, Andres Schatzlein, he's her husband. So we had as you could see, we had like a very international group at the time, and that's where I got my exposure to pharmaceutical science, from being a polymer scientist to pharmaceutical science. So lovely years and lots of opportunities. For example, there was a large conference, like more than 2,000 participants, Controlled Release Society conference, and that was my first large conference I've attended in Glasgow. Fortunately, all the photos are a bit of poor quality because, again, at the time, we didn't have like digital photos. We didn't have mobile. Well, we did have mobile phones, but not capable of taking good quality pictures. So apologies for that. Not my fault. But then after spending 2 years in Glasgow, I have realized, no, I really want to stay in academia to develop academic career and in the UK. So I started applying for jobs in the UK. There were lots of jobs available at the time, but again, I did send lots of applications. I don't know, like lots of emails, around 100 applications in total. And first, I got called for an interview to Manchester Metropolitan University. It was a lectureship in organic and polymer chemistry. And my interview, I think it went well, but then they provided feedback. They offered this position to a different person, so I was not successful. And they provided the feedback that you're a very strong scientist, but you don't have a teaching experience in the UK. Despite the fact I did have teaching experience in Kazakhstan, including in English language, but they didn't like it. Next, I applied to another university, a University of Bradford, and it was a lectureship in pharmaceutics in the same year, in 2004. Again, unsuccessful application. Again, the same feedback. So I've learned that, oh, in order to progress, in order to get a job, I need a teaching experience in the UK. So in that year, I also was applying for postdoctoral positions. So I was called for an interview in Manchester, and it was postdoc in pharmaceutical science, but related to polymers, and also University of Surrey, postdoc in radiation physics of polymers. You see, the areas are quite different, but it helps when you kind of walk at the interface of different disciplines. So I had two offers, one from Surrey, one from Manchester, and I decided to choose Manchester because the contract there was for 3 years. Contract at Surrey was for two. Surrey is much more expensive. It's like an expensive area in the UK compared to Manchester. Plus, I really liked pharmaceutical science. So I've chosen Manchester, and when I started as a postdoc, I told my boss straight away, I really want to become a lecturer in the UK, so I really want to get a teaching experience. So at the time, spent just 1 year in Manchester, but then I did attend lots of teaching courses available. Like normally universities in the UK, they organize these opportunities, and I also was involved in demonstrating at practicals, and also was teaching some workshops. So I did get this teaching experience in the UK. And the year after, I started applying for lots of jobs again. And Reading was my first interview. I think I did get like around 5 invitations to different institutions in the UK for lectureship positions, like it was King's College, Reading, then it was Strathclyde, I think, and so University of East Anglia, and the fifth, can't remember even. But Reading was the first one, and that's where I got my offer. And I really loved Reading campus as well. So it was a newly established school of pharmacy. So it was established exactly in 2005 when I joined it as a lecturer. And it was lovely that lots of other colleagues, they joined at the same time. So we all were new to the university and relatively young at the time, and started developing new school of pharmacy. So I was really lucky to have a brilliant mentor, and getting a mentor is really important in your scientific career. So this gentleman, Professor Adrian Williams, he was my mentor at the time. He was like head of our division. Now he still works at the university, and he holds a different position. He's a associate vice chancellor for graduate studies or something like that. And he's still my main collaborator. We jointly supervised many, many PhD students, and he taught me lots of lessons. And one of his first lessons was you must raise your research profile, and you need to do it through publications, conferences, collaborations, and so on. So another lesson, he told me that you need to publish a single author review. Now you are independent, so you need to establish your name in your area. So in 2007, I published a single author review, the first one, and I started traveling. It was very difficult to travel with Kazakhstani passport at the time. So applying for visas to all these countries, and then people question you at the airport. It was horrible. Like sometimes you are getting nervous when you cross the borders every time. Like the whole queue of people, they are passing through the border easily. You are the only one stopped, and they ask you weird questions, and you have to deliver some almost science lectures to the border control people. Then, as a lecturer, I got involved into committee work, which is again another advice. So try to get a member to become a member of a committee. So I became a member of a committee that is called Recent Appointees of Polymer Science. And at some point in 2009, I was charged to organize a conference. It was a conference of young people of recent appointees, and that's the whole community of this conference. And just to give you an idea, how important it is, networking, in terms of networking. For example, with this person who was at Reading at the time, I have joint papers and grants. With this person, he's from Belgium, very famous polymer scientist nowadays, Professor Richard Hugenboom, but well, he was like a postdoc at the time. And so I have joint papers, and also he invited me recently as an examiner to examine a PhD in his group. These people invited me to examine PhDs, their students. With this professor, he was one of our invited speakers, and he was the guy actually who offered me a job in Surrey, but I rejected his offer. But we still became collaborators, and we have joint papers. With this person, we have joint book, jointly edited book, and published actually a manuscript. And with this lady, we also have several joint papers by now. So you see, when you network during the conference is really, really important because you establish your connections. And when you are in your early career stage, the people who are in the same stage, eventually they will become big professors. Like out of this group of people, there are lots of like really, really big professors nowadays. And I think I need to update this slide because I have a few more collaborations among, for example, this lady is like a superstar in the UK, Professor Molly Stevens. She was made a dame recently, so that's a greatest honor, really. And I also quoted the paper with her, and she runs a group in Oxford University, like a group of 50 people, and she's really, really cool. So also, I always was trying to be as flexible as possible in terms of my science. My science was around materials, but biomedical applications of materials have led me to do some experiments with animals. So, and I'm really hands-on person, so I like to get involved in many experiments. And another extreme is physics because of my materials. They are of nanostructure nanomaterials, so I get to visit and to perform experiments at large facilities using neutron scattering. Um, so my further progress went to associate professor. I was promoted within 5 years since lectureship. I was promoted to associate professor, then to full professor. I became full professor in 2014. At the time, I was the youngest full professor at Reading School of Pharmacy. In Reading, we have 4 zones for professorship. So now I'm in zone 2. Zone 3, possibly I will get zone 3 eventually, but zone 4 is almost impossible. You need to get a Nobel Prize or something like that to become zone 4 professor. So what else I've learned to be really important for progressing your academic career? Obviously, society memberships you need to establish in your field. You need to learn what societies are important and influential. So in my field, there's Royal Society of Chemistry, American Chemical Society, Control Release Society, and Academy of Pharmaceutical Sciences. So when you are a member of these societies, of course, you have to pay money to become a member and have to continue paying, but it gives you lots of networking opportunities, and like many of the societies, they offer awards. Um, if you become a committee member for some societies, then you're gaining influence in your field. You get to invite people, you get to organize conferences, and if you invite someone to speak, then uh, people will invite you. And that's how you build your reputation. You need to review grants and papers. You learn from grants and papers. You get to influence the field because you get to advise what other people have to do. And in fact, becoming a reviewer is very, very easy nowadays because there's a lack of people who like to do reviews. Journal and book editorship. Well, once you established your reputation, you could start like becoming editors of journals and editing books. Publishers, they love some established people, established researchers who are interested to edit books. It's not the greatest job in terms of it does take lots of time, but it's good to have a book with your name on the title. And you get you need to get to editorial boards of journals. You need to get awards. And basically, well, obviously, one of the like a really prestigious awards, the top of the list is Nobel Prize. Well, when I was 14-year-old, I was telling all my friends, I will one day I will become a Nobel Prize winner. Well, how naive I was. So now, with my experience, I know that that's definitely not real. At least for my level of development, for what I do in terms of my research, not real at all. So, but I tend to think always, what is next? What targets I will set? So, well, I'm not interested in like higher positions in the university. For example, when there's jobs openings, like to become pro vice chancellor of the university, I'm not interested. I don't like. I'm still considering myself as a scientist. I like to develop my science, so I do have some of my targets, like a replacement for Nobel Prize. I know that I will never get it, but I have set slightly different targets what I want to achieve by the end of my career as a scientist. Now, a few words about the research I do. So I'm still materials scientist, but materials for biomedical applications, mostly biomedical, but I also do some projects with industry involving food science, materials for food science, materials for agriculture. But mostly my materials are polymers, and like going around polymers that are hydrophilic, so which means that they love water. They either swell in water to form hydrogels, or they dissolve in water or disperse in water. So where we use these polymers, this could be used as polymeric biomaterials, for example, contact lenses, wound care systems. So I worked with some contact lens company, previously collaborated with them. We do work on encapsulation of live cells. We did a lot of work on encapsulation of probiotic bacteria. We did collaborate with one company and worked academically. My biggest interest so far, and this is what I view as establishing your own topic, is the transmucosal drug delivery. So remember that my Polish professor told me that you need to have your topic, not topic of your supervisor. So that's what I view as my topic. I'm possibly the second person in the world based on the number of Web of Science publications published. Well, I have a competitor in Austria who did publish a lot more than me. So I'm approaching 100 and he did publish 200, but I'm the second person in the world so far. And most recent interest, I started getting interested in antimicrobial formulations. And also I started moving into biology. So in my group, we did establish some of the tests. We could use biological tissues taken from animals to test how different dosage forms, pharmaceutical dosage forms, stick to biological membranes. And we use slugs. Slugs we use for toxicology. So research with slugs, I started doing that almost 20 years ago, and now this transitioned into the creation of the PEVITAC. PEVITAC stands for Physicochemical Ex Vivo and Invertebrate Tests and Analysis Center. It's not the company yet, and it's the university center, but we work with external partners, and we offer three types of services. We still offer some chemical services on physicochemical studies. Then we work with ex vivo tissues. We offer some tests for how different drugs or molecules or compounds interact with biological tissues, how they adhere. And more, and I view it as the biggest selling point of our center is to work with live invertebrates. So remember, I've shown grasshoppers, torturing grasshoppers when I was a 7-year-old. Apparently, I do the same stuff, but with slightly different models. For example, we grow caterpillars, we infect them with bacteria, then we treat them with antimicrobials. We have several life invertebrate models in our portfolio, and I'm growing this portfolio. My dream that PEVITAC will become a company one day, and I don't want to become the CEO of this company because I'm still an academic. I still want to continue as a professor. I prefer to be in a scientific advisory role for this company, and I'm looking for like a person who could lead the company as a CEO. And I also have this ambition of setting up like a sister company in Kazakhstan. And well, we have some progress in Karaganda at Buketov University and some agreements there that we will develop some portfolio and set up a company in there as well. Well, beyond science, I'm not like a scientist who really like cares about science only. I have lots of different interests. So I'm martial artist. Well, I've been doing karate for 7 years, then failed my black belt exam 3 times. Um, well, because I tend to be nervous when lots of people are watching you. So then I quit karate. I moved to a different club doing kickboxing. Um, Progressed in kickboxing. I've been doing kickboxing for 3 years. Then over the summer this year, I decided to come back to karate and continue with kickboxing. So I do both. I do like this week, I've done 2 classes of kickboxing and 2 classes of karate. Now, still hoping that from my brown belt in karate, I will progress to block maybe over the next summer. I'm not a giver upper generally, but now need to restore all the knowledge I lost during these 3 years absence from karate. Um, I have I like pets. Also have a lovely dog, Penny, and she gives me lots of company and everything. She follows you every time you go somewhere. She follows you, and I'm a keen tropical fish fan. So I have three tanks at home. This is my smallest tank. I have like more than 100-liter tank as well. Well, I didn't have time to add my extra hobbies here, but I also like researching family tree. um, I liked I I plan to write a book about my family. One day I started. I've written like 5 chapters or so, but then with the recent political situations, it's really difficult to research family tree because of the situation in Russia, and I can't pay for services for search services in Russia at the moment. And I also like travel a lot. So I traveled 40 countries, mostly because of my research, but sometimes as holidays. So like over the in August, it was my visit to Norway. Norway was the country number 40. And well, I worked with many people so far during my career. Well, this list of people is incomplete list of PhD, mostly PhD students, except for these two, who graduated under my supervision at Reading. Like I can't remember the exact numbers, but 43 is the total number of PhD students I supervised. I collaborated a lot across the UK with lots of different institutions, still collaborate with most of these people. And as you could see, that's my main international collaborations. But generally, I quoted papers with 33 different countries, and I like growing this list. And well, that's it. I'm sorry for being a bit long, but hopefully it was a bit entertaining and something useful. Thank you.
No, dear Vitaly, definitely really appreciate your talk. I think it's amazing that you shared everything starting from your journey and later like every lesson that you learn, and really like it. I think our audience also appreciate it's started and also shared about your research and some lessons. So we have few questions, Vitaly. So first one. I think this is an important point that you mentioned. Yeah, how did you come up with your research topic, not your supervisors 20 years
Mhm.
ago? Is it came from your colleague's recommendation or idea from conference, or what else, or what? Can you more
So
elaborate
it
about this?
was
Thank you.
it was like gradually, it was like evolution rather than a sudden event. Because I did polymers in my PhD, I did work with water-soluble polymers, and I was making films based on water-soluble polymers. And at the time when I was doing it, like initially the task from my supervisor was I was supposed to use these films as membranes for separating different liquids like ethanol from water. But then it didn't work. We did like engineering skills to create separation membranes. But then I started looking through the literature, and then and especially when I came to Pakistan, uh, just to remind you that at the time there was a lack of literature availability. So I came to Pakistan. I was spending lots of time in their fantastic library, and then I came across some pharmaceutical journals in there where similar mixtures of polymers were proposed to be used in drug delivery. That's how specifically for transmucosal drug delivery. So there were publications published in Journal of Pharmaceutical Society of Japan or something like that. The author of these papers is Professor Tsuneji Nagai. So I came across his papers where he used very similar systems, but for pharmaceutical applications. That's how I came across this field, and that's how I started. But generally, I get lots of ideas from literature when I review papers, when I attend conferences. I'm like I love conferences, but um, I find it difficult to sit and listen to every talk. So I don't know what's the right English word, but in Russian it's called непоседа. So I am непоседа, and when I attend conferences, I sit somewhere, I chat with my friends, I sit in a Facebook and listen. In parallel, I listen. If I find it interesting, then I take a note. So sometimes it gives a new idea. So there's lots of different ways you could get ideas. It's good to attend conferences that are not in your field as well, because you get completely different ideas. And now moving into like biology, for example, yesterday our paper was accepted in um, Eco-Toxicological Journal. That's where we move because of the commercial interest in invertebrates. So I'm drifting in terms of my research interests from purely polymers to pharmaceutical science, now to toxicology, and like now ecotoxicology. And like trying to read literature, trying to attend many events, talk to people, that does help. And be flexible in terms of some people prefer to stay in one field for the rest of their life, which is perfectly respectable choice. But I'm one of those people who like drifting, and I think it does help.
Yeah, it's pretty much similar with Maral from Paris School of Business, also working as a professor. She also liked to drift and expand. It's because of interest. I really appreciate your feedback on this. Second question, Kibriya Noor from Korea. Kibriya, you can go ahead, unmute yourself, and ask your question if you want.
Hello, can you
Hello?
hear me well?
Yeah.
Thank you for your talk. It was very informative. I am undergraduate student at KAIST. I'm majoring in bioengineering and chemistry, and I'm also very interested about drug delivery and biomaterials. I think hydrogels as well, the fields that you're professional at. This year, I'm applying for a master's and to some universities to PhDs. And I wanted to ask what qualities will make a student exceptional, apart from maybe research experience? Like it's understandable that they should have. Yeah, I was curious about that.
Well, I do get lots of applications. Like almost like every month, I do receive several expressions of interest to join my group to do research, and I tend to, well, in the majority of cases, the first question I ask, do you have any funding to fund your PhD studies? So if people don't, then I can't offer anything because, well, the funding situation in the UK is not the best at the moment. So it's really difficult to get funding. And if they have funding, almost everyone, I will interview them. And like sometimes I do advise them where to get funding, but then I try to avoid that. If it is someone from Kazakhstan, I possibly will recommend apply for Bolashak funding. But then what I expect in an interview, obviously, uh, doesn't matter which field you come from. Like you could do something to do with like sciences. It could be life sciences, physical sciences. I will be always able to find a project for you because of my like broad interest and multidisciplinarity, but I expect the person to demonstrate some ability to think. And I always ask calculation questions in an interview. So that's my feature. If the person can't tell me how to prepare like 5% solution of whatever, of sugar, sodium chloride or whatever, then it's a bad sign for me. So how I could trust the data from to a person who can't make simple calculations. So that will be a killer in an interview. If they can't speak English properly, uh, that's another point. It will be a pain for me to work with these people if they can't do calculations. But then I like enthusiastic people. I like proactive people. So if someone will be proactively seeking opportunities, I possibly will help. I had an interesting case that I had an application from, like many years ago, I had an application from Nigeria, and it happened that this lady, she did send me an email, but I didn't reply to that email for some reason, because maybe I was traveling and each day I receive like 100 emails. Imagine that if you are abroad and you can't check your emails properly, you have lots of distractions, you're participating in a conference. So it happened the way that I did miss her email. So she sent another email, like 2 weeks after she sent another email, but a sad coincidence, I didn't reply to that email again. But then she was very proactive. She sent an email to, I think, to the graduate school of University of Reading, and then asking them that, well, I sent these two emails to Professor Khutoryanskiy, and he didn't reply to this. Does it mean he is not interested? So what the graduate school did, they forwarded this email to me, and I felt guilty at the time. Well, some people would be really annoyed by this person, like almost complaining that I didn't reply. But then I thought that, well, this person definitely wants to achieve something. So eventually I did interview her, and she became my PhD student, and she graduated already. She returned back to Nigeria, and she was a lecturer there, and she didn't lose contact with me. And I normally, when I have PhD students, I offer support for life in a way. All my PhD students are like my children in a way. So provided that we have good relationships, so I support them for life. So I was advising her. Now she became a lecturer in the UK recently, and like I still sometimes she sends me messages like WhatsApp messages asking for advice. Sometimes, well, these messages arrive at the wrong time in a way that, and sometimes I'm thinking, oh, come on, don't ask these questions because that's kind of distracts me a lot. But I still support. So yeah, being proactive is really, really important. And don't get disheartened if people don't reply to you. Uh, Try to be persistent, but then, well, I'm fine with that. Someone else possibly would be a bit more annoyed.
Thank you
Very
so
important,
much.
very important recommendation. Thank you for this, Vitaly. I appreciate it. Next one, Wali Khan. We have two questions more. Wali Khan, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I am an oncologist, and I'm interested in the theranostics specifically. So I'm interested in your opinion on the studies or approaches that have captured your attention in the areas of tumor microenvironment interactions with CAR T therapy and different drug delivery methods to solid tumors. Have you encountered any ideas that relate?
So I did work a little bit in the area of oncology, but very specific oncology. We were interested in the bladder cancer. Why bladder cancer specifically? Because, as I said, my drug delivery area is transmucosal drug delivery. So mucosal application of drug delivery for cancer treatment is really the bladder area, because when tumor is growing in the bladder, in urinary bladder, then it is treated by a catheter inserted through the urethra, then you instill the anti-cancer medication. And the biggest problem is the problem that, well, people need to urinate. So they will basically empty their bladder and the drug will disappear. So the problem of sticking the formulation in the bladder, retaining the formulation in the bladder, is very, very similar to my other mucosal applications. All mucosal applications, they experience problem of wash off. So in the eye, for example, and ocular drug delivery is one of my biggest areas. The problem that the eyes are continuously irrigated by the tear fluid, so we get bioavailability less than 3%. Typically, if you use eye drops, less than 3% will get to the eye. The rest will get to your mouth. And in the blood is the same story. I don't work with, mostly don't work with other cancer applications because the route of drug administration for most of cancer applications, either injections, well, or oral. But maybe I didn't have good ideas, but like nanotechnologies are really good for oncology. For example, in my field, again, in drug delivery, there's lots of promising developments in the area of like liposomal formulations for cancer therapy, like Doxil is one of the biggest examples, doxorubicin encapsulated within liposomes. There's several polymer drug conjugates when the anti-cancer drug is conjugated to a water-soluble polymer. When it is administered, then it's targeting the tumor. Then there's EPR effect, enhanced permeability and retention effect, when you need to have your formulation as nanoparticles of certain size, they will penetrate the tumor better than the healthy organs. So that's the areas potentially of promising development further. But I didn't work with this area within these areas except for the bladder. Does it answer your question? Thank you.
Thank you. And Jangatai, one question from Jangatai, just recently graduated his PhD from Germany. So Jangatai, go ahead.
I didn't graduate yet. I'm still at the end.
Yeah.
So thank you for the nice talk, Professor. And so I am at the end of my G, and I'm also looking like okay, I'm realizing that I don't exactly want to just keep going with my professor's topic. Like I want to there are like topics that I'm much more interested in that I would like to like go deeper into. So, and my question was like, okay, like I can spend, months, I can spend years like looking for some kind of scientific success in new areas. I mean, so like how long like did it take you to like, go into this new area?
Well, when I was doing my postdoctoral years, obviously I was working for a professor who was telling me what to do. And which is fair enough. They got funding, they were paying me salary. But then during those years, I was sort of thinking and like reading literature and developing some of the ideas. And during those years, I even did apply for some like funded research fellowships with my own ideas. I did try twice, once in Cambridge, three times actually, once in Cambridge, once in Oxford, once in Strathclyde. None of these three applications were successful. And, well, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know. But when I became a independent lecturer at Reading, I recycled these applications, and well, at least one of them, and apply for funding. And once I secured this funding, then I started doing the topics of my interests. But funding is a key there. If you want to do something of your own, you need to get funding. If you're successful, then you will possibly succeed. But to be successful is very difficult to get funding. The rates for success, well, at least in the UK, is between 10 and 20%. So let's say if it is 10%, it means that you need to write 10 applications and the chances that you may get one. So it's really, really difficult. Also, sometimes you kind of need to apply for funding, maybe consider other routes of doing your research. For example, if I can't get funding for my research idea in the UK, I have lots of collaborators in Kazakhstan. I could give them this idea. That's what I do. The success rate in Kazakhstan is much higher. And so with the right credentials, I help with my reputation and all these metrics, systems, number of papers, H indexes, and things like that. It certainly does help my Kazakhstani colleagues to secure these awards. So you could do it this way. Equally, I work a lot with industry. So sometimes if you find the right industry who could sponsor you, then that's how you could also try your own ideas.
I see. Yeah, thanks. I guess a few years. That would be good answer.
Yeah, but once you will get to an independent position, that's when you need to start really applying your for funding and try to get independent position fast. And during your dependent years, when you work for someone, for like professors, try to broaden your experience. Try to make sure that by the time you will be applying for independent position, you will be competitive. Your CV should look great. So you will be able to secure some independent positions, and then it's completely different story. It's really, in fact, very, very difficult to get an independent position. Well, at least in the UK, it's very, very difficult, very, very competitive. But once you get it, it's also a different level of competitions because you're competing with all your colleagues for funding.
Vitaliy, appreciated your feedback on that. With the last question is, so currently we see that geopolitical shifts, which also affecting the funding system, and in your experience, what factor should guide, because a lot of people that's sitting here at PhD and postdocs should guide to decision to stay in academia nowadays, especially, or transition to industry after PhD or postdoc. What do you think of that?
Well, for me, it was always no brainer, no question at all. So since I was an academic in Kazakhstan, I did have several fantastic offers of jobs in industry, and especially in like early 2000s, the situation economically in Kazakhstan wasn't as good as it is now. So it was hard time. So at the time when I was about to leave Kazakhstan, I worked for 4 different jobs, like mostly teaching jobs and doing research at 4 different places. But I always was saying no to industrial offers because I'm a natural academic. I like what I do. I like choosing what research I will do. And like since you've seen from my presentation, I was always dreaming to become a researcher, famous scientist. So it was no brainer for me for this point of view. Other people may have different desires, perspectives, dreams, but if you want to be an academic, it offers lots of interesting possibilities. You get to travel, you get to choose your own research field, but it also, in addition to all these things, you get lots of stress of getting your papers rejected, grants rejected. Grants rejection is more stressful than papers because papers you could eventually publish them in a different journal, but with grants it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. So yeah, there's always pros and cons for each type of job, and moving to academia to becoming an academic is a special job, but it's very rewarding.
Thank you, Vitaliy. Really appreciate your input. So with that, today we had amazing guest, Vitaliy Khutoryanskiy. He shared his all the way from Kazakhstan to the University of Reading. I think everyone enjoyed, especially in the Q&A session as well, where he replied to all your questions. So really appreciate, Vitaliy, for your input, and hopefully if you have any ideas or let's say some collaboration